Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of For the Most Part podcast, the vidcast version that is. And today we have one of the, I would say, one of the greatest. I don't want to say just audio engineers, producers, mixing and mastering specialists with us here in the house. Not in the house, but digitally. Please welcome Mr. Martin Raymond, aka Mice. Martin, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thanks a lot for the intro and the props.
Yeah, of course. Just to give a little background, I actually met Mice several years before the UTT. When we were in the UTT program, when he was teaching me at the time. I was playing with a band called The Flick, and we were at his studio at the time, and we were getting exposed to the I guess the experience as to professionalism, So that's just to give you all some insight. Mice's accolades are really, really long. So what we'll do is we'll just drop all that information on our website so that people can see. But I just want to talk to Mice early. Let's get right into it. So
Great. Yeah, you should mention the time. I think all of you guys were like 10 or 11 years old.
Yes, we were like 12 and 13 and that kind of thing. That's to tell you all how long ago this was. So Mice, I asked some preliminary questions before we actually got to this meeting, but what about that the Donna Summer song? And I remember you talking about this in UTT program. What just a few things. What made the song unique?
Well, that particular song, so what you're referring to is, one of the questions you asked was, what song kind of really turned your head around from an audio engineering perspective. In my case, this was really more about music production.
Right.
It was really the first all electronic song I had ever heard, where it was entirely, and it was really one of the first popular pieces of all electronic music.
Right.
And as the story goes, there was a house party in Diamond Vale that's a few doors up from me. And I'd kind of gone there early for a particular reason. And I was sort of helping the DJ was a friend of my brother, so I was helping him set up the sound system. And back then, that's when house parties were cool. You would empty out the living room and set up these big speakers, size of like small fridges. And that was like a regular thing growing up in Diamond Vale. Fantastic music. Every weekend there was a house party somewhere. Technically, you didn't need to be invited. You could just show up outside with a bottle, and most times you would get in. And then test out the system, DJ, a guy called Dane Grell, I forget his DJ name. He put this record on the system, and my brain exploded. I'd never heard a record that sounded like that before. It was also, for my mind, it was like hearing stereo for the first time. I remember hearing the synthesizers, the left synthesizers and the right. I was just like totally transfixed, and that started a long love affair with electronic music. And I remember right through this whole party, I just kept on harassing him, play that record again. It was really like hearing music from the future that just it's really like something came from another planet. And interesting enough, thinking another interview I mentioned, that's that area Diamond Vale was like so significant for me growing up. Quite a few years later, there was another record that kind of turned my head around. I remember distinctly, it would have been Boxing Day 1981 or 1982. I was no longer living in Diamond Vale. I was out of school. I was in the band Fireflight. And maybe in an effort to hold on to my youth, we decided to storm a party in Diamond Vale, a house party, actually on the same street, come to think of it, the street I grew up on. And we went up there with a couple of bottles, and much to our shock, we were blank. We weren't allowed to get in. We were probably older than everyone out there. So we just decided to hang out outside, linemen and cars. And somewhere in the middle, the DJ played Planet Rock by Africa Bambaataa. It was also my first time hearing that record. And from the time it started, there's that party people. I sobered up instantly. Once again, it was a similar experience of hearing this song. This was the song of the future. For me, it was like hearing the song of the future.
Wow.
For a lot of people, it's the first time hearing that record, and very unusually for a Trinidad crowd. People kind of went bananas instantly. Normally when Trini say a new thing for the first time, they'll stand up and not move, but that record had an instant impact. So those two records really sort of transfixed me, and I think it was very much the futuristic sound of it, the electronic sound of it. It was really something new.
Right. So, semi-personal question: what makes Mice known for being Mice? Now, I know that, of course, it's the accolades, but is there like like, I know people could say if they listen to your production work and that sort of thing, they could say, yeah, I know that's Mice there. What would be that one thing, would you say?
Personally, I have absolutely no idea, and it's the strangest thing for me. This is an experience I had a few years ago. A friend of mine from Malaysia, he lives in Malaysia, we worked together in London. He just wrote to me out of the blue on Facebook and said he came across this record on YouTube and he knew it was me.
Right.
I hadn't spoken to him in like 5 or 6 years. I'm like, how did you know? It turned out to be a record that I had done. How did you, because what did he credit, and how did you know that was me? And a similar, another friend of mine from the UK, a singer I hadn't heard of in many years, and I think more than 10 years, just out of the blue. But the day she messaged me or called me and said, I came across this record, there's 12 the band. Was it a band from Trinidad? I came across this record, and the time I heard it, I said, that has to be Martin, that has to be my soul. I really don't know what it is. I tend to think I don't have a sound. More, I don't try to impose my sound on artists. I really try to bring their sound to the forefront, even though there have been 1 or 2 times when I've kind of put a little bit of my sound in, but I try to think of myself as a transparent producer. But I really don't know what that sound is, what people hear. Same thing with mastering. To my mind, all I try to do is I try not to change the sound of the record at all. I'm very old school when it comes to mastering. I do not believe a mastering engineer should be interfering with or taking apart someone's mix and making it sound radically different. I always try to keep the same sound, maybe just a little bit louder, which is very difficult to do actually. Right. Yet people tell me, wow, they just love what I've done or the sound of it. But to my mind, I'm like, well, I didn't do anything. I kind of try my best not to make it sound radically different. So short answer, who knows?
Yeah, no problem. No, that's all good. I think that's a fair answer, actually. So what for you would you say? Well, I mean, we've spoken about this in brief detail on via email communication. But what would you consider like a basic studio setup for someone who wants to get into this kind of thing?
Right. What I would say, so a basic studio setup is very easy these days. Any laptop, you can go to once stores open again, you can go anywhere, Ports, Price Smart, pick up any laptop, and what you have is a very advanced computer capable of running some of the most advanced software. We have far better technology than what we had in recording studios 20 years ago.
Right.
The decent audio interface, pair of speakers. And the thing about it, all this technology has really become very affordable. All this technology has become very affordable compared to what it would have previously. You would have needed close to millions of dollars to have a proper recording studio. Now we can do it with a few off-the-shelf components. What I would say though is, to me, the most important thing I would say above and beyond equipment is good acoustics. What I would encourage people is find the best sounding room in your house, walk around, sing, talk, whatever spot has the best vibe or sounds the best to you, set up your equipment there. Also try to learn a little bit about room treatments. There's stuff you can build yourself. There's inexpensive stuff you can buy nowadays. And the main thing is to try and stay away from any rooms that have like regular dimensions, like a 10 by 10 room, 9 by anything like that is bad news. It sounds bad and it's very difficult to create music in there. The more irregular shape a room is, the better.
Right.
Particularly if you have like an irregular ceiling Like if you have like an old house with one of those kind of old ceilings, perfect.
Right.
But too many people overlook this. And the reason I'm saying this, just this week, I saw a thread on a forum I'm on where this person bought like an incredibly expensive microphone setup, some like a $15,000 US mic, top of the line preamp, and was still complaining, it sounds bad, help, what am I doing wrong? And I'm asking questions. The room, he had it set up in a very echoey room, so you could have the most expensive mic in the world. If it's not in the right space, you're gonna get poor results.
Right.
And it's something that took me a long while to learn. Even the worst pair of speakers in the world, in the best best acoustically perfect room, will carry you much further than the most expensive speakers in a poor room.
Right.
And that's something that took me a long while to learn.
Right. Interesting. And I would say from personal experience, yes, I figured out that you don't need the best of the best, especially if your pocket is very, very not that deep. It's a shallow pocket and you just need to get something started, you know. So one question would be then, what would you say like that engineers and producers get wrong about their field? And what would you say they get right as well?
Well, two things. I look at it, there's really two separate jobs. In terms of engineering, I would think engineers, you really need to learn to record stuff properly. You need to spend a long time listening to as much acoustic and develop your own sonic point of view. When things open, go and listen to steel band. It's important to listen to unamplified music, because one thing I've always had that I got from the late great Bruce Sweden was that anytime you're listening to music over a pair of speakers, you're not listening to the music at all. You're listening to somebody's opinion of what that music should be. Someone decided what microphone to use, where to place it, how to mix it, to get it coming through those speakers. And it's important as an engineer to develop your own sonic opinion. And the only way you can do that is by listening to unamplified music, human voices, people speaking, talking, etc. So it gives you a point of reference to fall back on. Interesting enough, when we were starting the course at UTT, Bruce Sweden we knew a bit about Trinidad, and that's a piece of advice he gave us. He said, look, you guys have the perfect opportunity there. You have these steel orchestras on every corner. Have your students go out to the steel orchestras and they get a chance to hear music without plugins, without EQ, without compression. Listen to how musicians naturally balance music. So that's on the engineering side. On the production side, I would say two things. People need to learn what production is. Production is not programming beats on a computer. Number one, that's a small aspect of it. And you have to learn how to work with people. Also, you really need to study your craft. You need to, and there's a lot of great learning material on YouTube these days, but you need to do things like study the charts, figure out what is popular, why, what is working, what is not working. And I suppose when things open back out again, it's very important to see how people react to music. In other words, you cannot sit in a bedroom and create a hit record as much as you think you can. The persons who have done that are persons who also are out DJing, out partying, seeing how people react to music. In terms of what people are doing right, I think two things have kind of coincided in the last 20 years. The rise of high quality, low cost equipment. Whereas before that, anything to do with audio was expensive. You wanted a condenser microphone, a couple $1,000 US.
No, yeah.
You wanted a pair of speakers, that's $5,000-10,000 US. A mixing board, same. So we now have, for really the first time since this field started almost 100 years ago, we now have high quality, low cost equipment. So that in turn to me has led to a higher standard, better recordings, etc. Also, we have this great learning resource from the internet, and even though there's a lot of information out there, a lot of incorrect information, but there's also a lot of good information. And I think so in ways in terms of standards of mixing, mastering, production have increased definitely in the last 20 years. I will say I learned more in the early 2000s, between 2000 and 2005. I learned more from the internet, in terms of particularly a particular chat forum used to be called Guest Sluts, now called Guest Space. I learned more in 5 years just on that by interacting with other engineers, sharing knowledge, and I had learned in the 20 years of my career previously.
Right. Wow. So now I have this question, and you gave a first answer. So that was, should engineers be versatile to operate both in studio and a live setting? So what exactly would you say would be the best approach for people getting into this field where those in studio and the outside operating in a live performance would be?
Right. So what I would say, I know I sort of gave you an answer
Yes.
previously. I say yes or no. So in the sense of they're really two very different things. I consider, let's look at it in terms of science or medicine. Studio engineering is like being a research scientist or a doctor who is in a laboratory researching. Live sound, that's like being an emergency room surgeon.
Right.
The patient is on the table bleeding out in front of you, and people are screaming at you to do something. Two very different things. One thing I've discovered, I think it's important to learn. It's probably good to start in a studio first and then transition to live. Like studio gives you a set of rules. I went to break them. I think what happened here in Trinidad, we saw a lot of people start out working with different sound companies and learning on the job, as a result of which there's a lot of kind of gray areas. We have a lot of very good live engineers, but because I think they learned on the job, or they learned from one particular type of equipment, one particular company, they probably need to do a little bit more. And what we found, because of our market is so small, in this market, it really pays for people to do both. And most of the studio engineers in Trinidad I know are also great live engineers. I learned from like Frank Agarat. There are people like Sean Poland, Brian Morris, Nigel Brizan. All of the top studio engineers are also top live guys, and that's just our market.
Right.
Why I said it's changing, in that because of the pandemic, live engineering has now morphed into become adjunct to broadcast engineering.
Okay.
And this is something moving forward. A live sound engineer, you would also have to be a broadcast engineer. Your thing is not going to be how to make it sound good for an audience, a live audience. How do you make it sound good on a streaming? How do you make it sound good over the web, etc.? And that, in some cases, requires a more hybrid approach, a more studio-like approach.
Right.
So I think you'll be seeing a lot more of that, and it's something we're looking at in terms of UTT, in terms of audio mixing, etc. Yeah, where's the field going to be in 5 years' time?
Right.
Even though once we get out of this,
Pandemic.
shows and concerts and stuff are gonna come back, but I think it's still gonna come back in a different way, and I think streaming is here to stay.
Wow. Okay. So I just want to wrap this up because I know you have to go. And what we'll do is we'll include some of your links and I'm sure websites and whatever else to our podcast description. But what is one thing and one piece of advice that you'd give to basically anybody in this field that wants to get into production, engineering, songwriting? Because as I said, your accolades kind of prove both along the lines of, you've worked with hit songwriters as well as the hit engineers and producers as well.
Well, what I would say once again is taken from the late Michael Jackson: study the greats and become greater. You want to be a great songwriter, you need to study the great songwriters. Study what's number one in the top music markets of the world now and why. If your field is calypso or soca, study, I would exercise I give my students, study the last 10 road marches and tell me, why do you think they worked? So you really have to study your craft, etc. In terms of engineers, I always tell people protect your ears. Yes, modern science is very advanced, but we don't have replacement ears as yet. So watch volumes in studios, watch listening on headphones. Really treat your ears are your greatest asset. And I strongly recommend taking notes as much as possible. As you might remember, our very first class, we say the most important tool an engineer has is a pen and paper. And I recommend writing stuff down. Like, trust me, I have my notes from 20 or 30 years ago that I can still look through. I don't think I have any computer files from 20 or 30 years ago that I can recover. Right now, I'm having a bit of difficulty recovering some files from 2009, which is just about 11 years ago. So pen and paper, paper doesn't crash.
Right.
Highly recommend that.
Well, ladies and gents, we've come to the end of this episode. Mice, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for your.
Yeah, of course, man, of course, and more of these things to come for the next season. Ladies and gents, that was part 2 of our season finale. That's it for season 2. We will be seeing and we'll be hearing you for season 3. Peace out. Bye, guys. Thanks, Mice.